Welcome to another edition of Dad's Divorce Live. I'm Matt Allen, editor of DadsDivorce.com. Today we're doing a series of interviews with the featured speakers at an upcoming Parental Alienation conference happening in New York City the first weekend in October 2nd and 3rd. The conference is titled Parental Alienation Syndrome, Past, Present, and Future, and it's specifically geared towards mental health and family law professionals, but it is also open to the general public, and our viewers can probably get a lot from this conference, especially those going through parental alienation right now. As a bonus to DadsDivorce.com readers, the first 20 people who email me at info@DadsDivorce.com will receive a free ticket to the event, which is about $200. It's a $200 ticket you'll be getting for free. And then if you aren't in the first 20, you can still receive a discounted price. Just send me your contact information again at info@DadsDivorce.com to receive that discount. For more information on the actual conference, which is actually called the Canadian Symposium for Parental Alienation Syndrome, although it will be taking place in New York City, you can visit the conference's website at www.cspas.ca, since it is a Canadian organization. Today, I'm joined by attorney Brian Ludmer. At the conference, Brian's speech will focus on discussing and managing the legal and all other aspects of the parental alienation case. So, Brian, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Matt.
Now, first off, how does one respond to a parental alienation dynamic as the targeted parent?
Well, the answer, Matt, is generally a combined, synthesized response that incorporates some legal solutions, a lot of practical solutions, and certainly a therapeutic intervention. And the real key is how to manage all of that and make that all work together to achieve the goal of reconciliation.
And in terms of legal responses, what can you do to sort of combat an alienating parent?
Well, I guess the key thing is you need to strictly and frequently and early on assert the targeted parent's right to the access they're supposed to have with the child. Most of the problems in terms of judicial timidity or sidetracking a case into just some therapeutic answer alone that generally won't work is occasioned by delay at the outset. There's an undue emphasis on hoping that the aligned parent will somehow achieve some epiphany and change their behavior, or that things will just work its way out. If you need to tackle it early on and frequently, and it's short-term pain for long-term gain in terms of cost. It's much less costly to tackle it early on than after a dynamic develops. Some of the other tools from a legal perspective would be to ask for a parental coordinator to be appointed, and that would be somebody who's focused not so much on the children's behavior and getting through to the children as it is on the parental behavior, which is at the heart of this dynamic. In addition, you can ask for a therapeutic intervention, but it needs to be a multi-client, fully open process. And by that I mean that the therapist involved, and usually we would like to see at least psychologist, if not psychiatrist, has as clients everybody, aligned parent, targeted parent, and the children. The difficulty with therapists just for the child is they don't actually have a mandate of demanding and fostering reconciliation, and they have some issues in terms of privacy and not sharing everything. So it's the multi-client type of therapy that sometimes works.
Now, typically in parental alienation cases, there are lots of false allegations made and delay tactics in hopes of, basically delaying it or keeping the alienated parent even further away from their child. So how do you deal with delay tactics being used or false allegations being made by the other side?
Yes, this is certainly an unfortunate circumstance of many of these cases, and actually increasingly frequent. Firstly, in terms of my earlier comment about some practical tips for targeted parents, there's lots of warning signs about this. There's some things you can do to protect yourself from the impact of a false allegation. You can't really stop them from being made, and
right.
Quite often the fact they're being made can be used to your advantage. but you want them dismissed quickly because while a child protective service is investigating, you're typically frozen out of the child's life. There's a process of intervention with them to make sure that they see the big picture and they know that it's happening within the context of a high-conflict divorce, so that their investigative protocol is much more forensic, and they're looking for the indicia of just manipulation. And then after it's done, you want to get the clinical notes of the investigator, and quite often there's some very telling comments, such as, when I interviewed the children, their language appeared scripted and adult-like. And then you can turn a false allegation into an amazing tool to fight back against the aligned parent. So you always get the clinical notes, and you always suggest to the investigator that they look for that.
Right. Well, in these type of cases, what must be avoided?
You already mentioned delay. Delay is the number one mistake that gets made, and delay is the number one tactic of the aligned parent and their attorneys. Mm-hmm. The system itself is quite ponderous, and there's a series of tools we do to try and move the case along as fast as possible toward the eve of trial. Most alienators will fold rather than actually go on the stand at a trial. And for the same reason, if you can get some, it's called differently in different jurisdictions, but questioning or examination for discovery, where you question the aligned parent under oath during the case, you can get some amazing admissions that then inform the custody and access assessment and therapeutic interventions. So the idea is to expose them, not allow them to hide behind false affidavits and lawyers' letters, and that typically will force their hand.
Now, we have many resources available to alienated parents on our website, DadsDivorce.com, but are there other resources out there available to those parents being targeted?
Certainly. There's some great websites, not only DadsDivorce, which is one of the places I frequently go to. There's the Parental Alienation Awareness Organization. There's the Canadian Children's Rights Council, has an amazing collection of materials. In addition, there are some great books, cheap softcover books written by some of the leading experts, where you get all their insight for $20 instead of paying them hundreds and hundreds of dollars an hour.
Right.
Dr. Warshak has a book out, Dr. Darnell, Amy Baker, etc. And there's support groups for estranged parents where everybody exchanged notes and names of experts, that kind of thing.
Now, finally, the conference is geared toward professionals, mental health professionals, family law professionals, but it's open to the public. So what can the general public expect to get out of it, or why would you encourage an alienated parent to come check it out?
Well, I'm really glad you mentioned that, Matt, because there's, firstly, tremendous value here. You mentioned an introductory offer, but even at the full conference price, 2 full days with the leading experts in North America, you're going to get tons of insight into managing your own case. So the targeted parent, they're the general of this war that unfortunately they've been dragged into.
Right.
And they need to be an informed consumer of mental health services, of legal services, and in terms of managing their own financial budget for this. And whatever they can pick up will serve them well in trying to advance their own case to reconcile with their children. Certainly my presentation is at least half directed at the targeted parents, and I'm sure most of the other presenters as well.
Sure. Well, Brian, thanks again for joining us. I appreciate it, and best of luck with the upcoming conference.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Again, that was Brian Ludmer. He's a family law attorney who will be presenting at the Parental Alienation Conference coming up in New York City the first weekend in October. And again, email me info@dadsdivorce.com for potentially free tickets or at the very least discounted tickets. That'll do it for this edition of Dad's Divorce Live. I'm Matt Allen, editor of DadsDivorce.com. We'll see you next time.